today was bad. Light work, people. Light work. Seems we're soft all over the pitch.
Hello folks, how are we doing? It's Grizz TV. It's the Liverpool versus Villarreal preview. As you can see, Grizz is not actually here right now. He's currently stuck in traffic, but he is heading his way. He's phoned me ferociously a few times. He's on his way. He should be here soon. But in the meantime, I'm delighted to be joined by Mick, as we've seen him a few times, and actually more than a few times, Mick. You're a regular now on the channel. And obviously, we're delighted to be joined by Josh, who's our special guest tonight to give us a breakdown on Villarreal to a certain extent. We're not going to go full away because we'll share the knowledge on Villarreal. But how are you doing, guys? Josh, firstly, how are you doing, mate? And thanks very much for coming on the channel.
No, thanks for getting me involved, mate. Yeah, I'm excited to make my debut. Nowhere near as experienced as Mick, but I'll do my best.
No, that's great. And Mick, how are you? Mick's great because Mick knows I appreciate his constant retweeting of Liverpool goals on Twitter. So it's like a slow day at work, and then he's like random obscure goals that I've not seen for years. Mick retweets it, so Mick knows I've got a good spot for that. But how are you doing, Mick? How's your day been, mate? Busy day?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, just looking forward to. I know we've been talking about City and Real Madrid tonight, so I'm looking forward to that, and obviously tomorrow. Yeah, can't wait. Like I said, it feels like every couple of games is another big game, and it's another huge one, really. Something that we should be like thanking our lucky stars that we're in this position. The job Jürgen's done and the way the season's gone, just been absolutely tremendous. So yeah, just enjoy every minute of it. Can't wait.
No, well put, mate. I do think actually I've seen a lot of that recently. You need to enjoy these moments. People are always complaining, "Oh, it's game after game. I'm nervous. I'm excited," but that's if you want to win everything, that's what you got to do, and that's it. So just a quick side note on the City game tonight, guys. What do you actually want to happen? Like, would you prefer that City get knocked out, or would you prefer that they stay in it because you know that they're going to have at least another game to focus on?
Personally, no question about it. I would rather get knocked out. The thought of facing them in the final is not a nice one. I think they're the only team on the planet who can compete with Liverpool in terms of, all over the pitch, 1v1 battles and going toe-to-toe and things like that. And if their first European Cup was to happen against Liverpool, it would be painful, and we wouldn't be able to forget about it. So, and I think generally Real Madrid, although they've obviously got plenty of history in the tournament, and they are having a generally good season, I do think in terms of levels, I do think they're a level below Liverpool. They've only been working with Carlo Ancelotti now for about 10 months or so. So I think Liverpool would be the stronger team going into that. So yeah, hopefully City got knocked out, but I can't see it.
I think it's a very good. I tend to agree with that one. Mick, what's your thoughts on it? Do you agree with Josh?
Yeah, echo exactly what Josh said completely. We saw in the league game and the FA Cup that I don't want to be facing them in a one-off game. It's gonna be too much to handle. Especially if we lost that one, you'd never hear the end of it, and obviously being their first one as well, it's like a double whammy. So no, don't get City at all costs. But I know it's easier said than done because they are an absolutely tremendous team. So
yeah, no, absolutely, and I tend to agree. To be honest, guys, I feel like Josh kind of made a really good point there as well. If it's their first one against us, that's something you're not going to forget. And if you can get Madrid, I think you can turn Madrid over. We spoke about that, especially in transitioning in the midfield. We've seen other teams get lots of chances, especially Chelsea. And without delay, here is Grizz. He's managed to return 4
lads,
minutes.
Where have you been, lads? Like, I've been waiting for you, like, in another studio, it seems. But listen, I first of all apologize to everyone. First of all, apologize to Josh. So sorry, mate. I mean, this is what KHANAGE is.
What are you about to?
This is what. No, you guys don't even know half the story. My car got stolen. I'm not even joking. No, I saw it. No. I saw
I don't know this. I don't know if he's kidding. I don't know.
No, I'm not kidding. I swear to God, it got stolen. And so I had to make a report and then all sorts. And I thought, man, I've been wanting to get Josh on for ages and ages and ages, and finally got him. And then I'm going to miss it. But finally, I had to pay Uber and I had to get the executive Uber to get us. A long story. But it's cost me
that's actually going up in the world, mate. Executive Uber. Jesus
oh
Christ,
man! But listen, people probably thinking, why are we on so early? why have we got the Europa League kickoff times today? Well, because people are busy, man. Josh is
That's
a busy
my
man.
fault. Yeah, that's my fault.
Yeah, so blame Josh for the early start, but hopefully you make it through. Of course, Mick's been on plenty of time, so he doesn't need no introduction, but he still gets an introduction. Mick, how you doing, man? You good?
Yeah, I'll go. Mate, nice to join us.
Thank you. Yeah, better late than never. And of course, Conroy holding the fort. I'm sure he was amazingly and brilliantly as always.
Yeah, we've not touched on any Villarreal yet, mate. It was just a quick segment on Man City, so all fresh.
It's an interesting game, isn't it? I mean, we could probably start off with that. It is an interesting game. It's a massive game. I just looked at the lineups, and they're not starting Casemiro. Now, I know he was an injury doubt, but he's gone with a very attacking lineup, Carlo Ancelotti. He's actually playing, so he's got the usual back four, and then he's got Modric and Kroos and Valverde, who's going to probably slot in, who's a dynamic, isn't he, box to box, full of energy type player. But without Casemiro, is that a bit of a risk? I mean, I don't know who wants to come in on that. Is that a bit of a risk without Casemiro going to the Etihad?
Is there a reason behind that?
He was a slight injury doubt, but if he's made the subs bench, as he has, it indicates that he's good enough to be on the subs bench. They brought in Rodrigo, who's come up with a few important goals, but it's an interesting selection. Carlo Ancelotti is not one to be brave and attacking like his lineup and formation against PSG proved. But he got a lot of abuse for that, didn't he, in the media?
Yeah.
But then he played very attackingly at Chelsea, so maybe it's a continuation of that, maybe? Anyone's got a thought on that?
Well, we did mention, Grizz, actually. We did say recently, actually, just before he came on, about a lot of people have said Camavinga has made a lot of, actually, in the previous rounds against PSG and even against Chelsea came on, he's made a difference. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on. I know you like Valverde. I know you rate him quite highly. But he's up there. Like, I'd say Fabinho's the best DM. Fabinho, Rodri probably on their own level. But I do think Casemiro in the past has been probably number one, and he's been very consistent. And I think he makes a big difference. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I don't know. I feel like if you're going away to City in a transition, especially with the amount of, even if when they use a false nine, midfielders getting on the ball, that we'll see how that goes. It might work out great, but they could alternatively get absolutely battered. So we'll need to see what happens.
It's an interesting one. If people hear of the City lineup, if it comes out, please do let us know, because obviously we're going to be on the show right now. But it'd be interesting to see how City lineup. I don't know if you've asked their opinion. Have you guys given an opinion who would rather face? I know for me, it would be Real Madrid all day long.
Yeah, we've done that just before you came in, literally just before you came in.
I mean, I get people talking about the revenge element and all that about Madrid, but sod that for a laugh. I don't want to pay Man City. Josh, are you of the same opinion?
Literally what Josh said.
Yeah, that's literally what I said. Mate, yeah, there's no. I mean, obviously beating Man City would be very, very nice, but the possible downsides and the matchups across the pitch, I'd just rather not do it. I'd rather face a team that we can potentially even dominate, and I think Real Madrid did that. I think they've obviously got certain perks. They've got a good front three. But I do think Liverpool would be the favourites going into that final, whereas if it was City, I mean, flip a coin.
But yeah, 100%, mate. I think
it's especially as I think you was talking about transition, wasn't you, Conroy? In terms of Madrid on the transition, yes, technically gifted players, smart up here, but in terms of just pure legs and energy, surely we'd have the run on them. And I know we thought that in when we faced them last season, but I think we had a bit of a nightmare in midfield, didn't we, in that game?
Yeah, and even in the Anfield leg, you say that, Grizz, but we had created a lot of chances in the first half at Anfield as well. So it's like, I think you see what Chelsea done at the Bernabeu. I think that's an adequate description. Well, I understand Madrid have got quality. You can always do stuff. I think you're right. I think Chelsea could have scored about 5 at the Bernabeu if they're clinical, and I think we're in that form. So I agree with Josh. I think you play Madrid. I think you're confident. Not see the final a couple of years ago. It was kind of, I'd say, you can see what you can do. But I think it's not even, I wouldn't say arrogance, but you're much more confident if you play Madrid. I think you could, in your head, you think, right, we could dominate the ball and beat them comfortably. Whereas you say City, it's like Josh said, if City win their first European title, the first Champions League against us, that's not going to be great for the memories either.
Yeah, it's a flip of a coin, as Josh says. Listen, I've arrived late. Mick's had iPad problems as well now. He's logging back in. But This is what makes the show, mate. This is the beauty of it. We're not professionals. It's called Carnage for a reason, and it's absolute carnage. But listen, we're going to try to tack into the game tomorrow. Josh, Unai Emery, first and foremost. A fan of his? Are you? Because he comes across as more of a Rafa Benitez school type of manager as opposed to the Pep Guardiolas of this world or the Jurgen Klopps. He's more, just more pragmatic, would you say? A cup manager, many would say, because his record in cups is insane, isn't it? Like wherever he's gone, obviously barring the awful time he had at PSG and Arsenal. But you a fan of his?
Yeah, I think he's a curious one, actually, Emery. I'm not really sure when it comes to, his level, how good he is and stuff. I always found it a little bit weird how he kind of portrayed himself when he came to England. Like even if you look at like his Twitter account, his Twitter background header image is him with like a bit of a Einstein chalkboard behind him with all potions on and formulas and stuff, and he's holding like an old-fashioned football and stuff. So I think he views himself as a bit of this tactician, this tactics genius, if you like. And I think when he's allowed to take charge of the underdog, or he's allowed to take charge of a team in a cup competition where you're going to win one-off games, I think he is very, very good when it comes to that. When it comes to formulating one-off strategies to win certain matches, but when it comes to building an identity, if you like, building a philosophy which has more of an impact on a league performance over the course of 38 games, I'm not sure he's as strong when it comes to that. And I think specifically when he came to England, this might be a bit too harsh, but I don't actually think his English was ever that good. And I think that's massive when it comes to being a coach of his nature, when he's very, very, fine details and stuff. And
it's a very good point.
So I think where he is now, he's in his home country, in charge of loads of Spaniards, in charge of an underdog, able to attack cup competitions. If they finish 7th in the league, it's fine. I think he's got a perfect job now. But overall, he is a weird, relatively unique coach, I'd say, yeah.
It's interesting. You make a very good point there, actually, because someone like him, Conroy, who's absolutely all about the minute detail, the intricacies, like repetitive instructions on the training ground. We've seen so many memes of him and all sorts, like turning into almost a comedy figure, which was cruel. We know that. We're not going to get into that aspect. But Josh makes a very good point, because when you're that type of coach, as opposed to more of a motivational type coach, an inspirational type coach, when you're all about the details and getting the message and communication across, language is important, isn't it? At that very highest level.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a very, very good point, Josh, because you can see how well he's done with Spanish teams like Sevilla. It is the Europa League is the Emery Trophy at this point in time, to be honest. He's smashed that. He's beat us in a final. I think what he done with Villarreal there was very impressive. I mean, I think the semi-final against Arsenal, that's probably a big moment for him in his career as well. And then beating Manchester United. And people do forget now, because we're laughing at Manchester United, but they were overwhelming favourites going into that final as well. And the fact he managed to get the result, I think to me it's actually a very good thing for him, because I agree, Grizz, the PSG thing sticks in your memory. The Barcelona comeback, it's the most embarrassing defeat in maybe Champions League history. But then I do feel like what he's done, the Europa League wins following that again with Villarreal, and then this Champions League run with Villarreal, I think does put a lot more credit in the bank, and I do think it's kind of put his stock back up. I would tend to be on Josh's opinion that that's probably, he might not go to other teams again, or maybe not try to go to that high elite clubs, because he knows that it maybe doesn't suit the way he wants to play, and he suits that siege mentality, that underdog team. So I feel like he's actually done very well, and beating Juventus and Bayern Munich is, yeah, they're no mean feats. I think that's a great achievement. But I would ultimately look at his time in England, that Josh's point of the maybe lack of, not he's got a lack of identity, but when you talk about Klopp, you know what his type of style of football is. I'd say with Emery, it's more he'll adapt his team to make it difficult in those one-off matches. And maybe ultimately the Arsenal appointment maybe was the wrong one, because that's maybe not who they needed at the time. But I think he's done very well in the past couple of years to put his credit back up and put his stock high again.
Mick, thanks for joining us.
I deserve that.
Karma. You know that karma. Yeah.
I thought that straight away. As soon as I got kicked out on my iPad, I was like, "Oh, Grizz has got some ammunition."
Yeah.
Don't even bother coming back in after that.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Mick. But we're just chatting about Unai Emery. Strange managerial career already, and he's still fairly young. He's not that old. So obviously we know that Seville, fantastic, 3 Europa Leagues was it in a row, which is just quite an achievement. And then obviously the time at PSG and Arsenal, not so great. And now he's rebuilding his career, so to speak. And again, but even if we look at his sort of league situation, Villarreal were languishing in 7th. And we know La Liga's not as strong as it used to be. So for example, 7th, maybe 7-8 years ago, might have been looked at as not bad. Like not great, but not bad. Whereas now 7th in La Liga is pretty damning, in my opinion. Would you agree? But yeah, he's so brilliant in cups. What's your suggestion of why that is?
I think it's maybe a case of they just kind of focused on Champions League. I think, like Conroy said, beating Bayern Munich and Juventus is like no mean feat. The fact that they did that gives them a bit of a free hit, really. I mean, they're going to be taking it as serious as anything in this game, but like they've got nothing to lose, really. It's a two-legged affair. They're away first. Then we've got to go to their place, which will be even more difficult. But yeah, I think he's done a great job. I think with the Arsenal thing, I think sometimes footy's all about time, and I think that the period in time that he went there, maybe they went in the best position, and I don't think it was quite the right fit. And I think the whole good evening thing, and I think the fact that he kept doing that all the time, it's easy in England in the English media just lap up stuff like that, and you can easily become a bit of a running joke, even though he's a great manager. I think that kind of goes against him, but I think this Villarreal team definitely suits him. I think he get off like the Newcastle job as well, not too long ago.
Yeah.
And he turned that down to focus on what he's doing at Villarreal. And he's now proved that he's an excellent manager and he's great at coaching a team of players, a very good team of players. So yeah, it's no mean feat that what he's produced. And yeah, I think it's all credit to him for the job he's done, really.
Yeah, look, Villarreal didn't win anything. In the sort of since they've existed, and they've managed to beat, of all teams, Man United, amazingly, in the Europa League, and as a result, Champions League. And look, Josh, we can't look. Of course, if you offered us Villarreal, if we knew at the start of the season that we're going to have Villarreal over 2 legs to reach the Champions League final, wow, we would have just said, okay, what's gone on here? Have the other teams been sort of kicked out of the competition or on a bye basis? And then especially if you told them that they kicked out Juventus and Bayern Munich, who was the other major scout? There was another major scout, but can't remember now. But Bayern Munich and Juventus, we can't take them lightly, but we have to be absolutely confident of going through over 2 legs, surely.
Yeah, it's one of those where Liverpool are absolutely the favourites, and rightly so as well. And you don't want to go to galaxy brain saying things like, Liverpool are going to have to be at the best and all this sort of stuff, and Villarreal could knock Liverpool out and things like that. But then at the same time, they realistically could. They are a threatening team. They do pose certain threats. They are very good at making solid opponents look bad and play their own game and things like that. So it's an interesting one, really. Across the board, they're a really interesting team. And as I said, they can knock certain teams out. They can knock the likes of Liverpool out of a tournament. But over the course of 2 legs, 180 minutes, I mean, you have got to say Liverpool should win this, without doubt.
I think so. I mean, even the most pessimistic amongst us would say that, the form we're in, the type of team we are as well, guys. I mean, I think one of the major major pluses for a Jurgen Klopp team, especially in the last few years. We won't count last season because of the reasons we know, but the season we won the league and this season as well. In terms of problem solving, this is one of the best teams I've seen in a long time from a Jurgen Klopp. We absolutely know how to solve problems, and even though, as Josh says, Unai Emery seems to be an expert in terms of analysing the opposition for a one-off, or as the case may be, two-legged affair, he kind of focuses. He gets the chance to focus because before we try to get into the tactics of it, whatever they throw up shouldn't come as a surprise to us. And even if they do come as a surprise over two legs, I think that is absolutely advantageous for us, right, Conroy? Because obviously in a one-off game, he could pull off the tactics to beat you and have a great day about it.
No, I agree. And I think when you look at the Man United Europa League final last year, it's a perfect example of that. I don't think I watched the first half of that game, guys, because I thought, what's the point? Like United with Fernandes in form, and you felt, they're going to have too much for them. And ultimately, again, it worked out that he has a plan. He scored in the first half, I think, in that game, if I remember correctly. Or in general, he'll stop teams, he'll find ways, find weaknesses, and he'll play on that. So I think it being two legs does help us. It'd be interesting to get all three of your thoughts on the fact the second leg being in Villarreal. Obviously, we can't dictate that, but do you see that as being would you prefer it being at Anfield? Like I always prefer it being at Anfield for the second leg, but some fans have said that, I'm quite happy it's Anfield first leg because we know we can try and get the game finished, but you know what I mean, try and have to put a bit more into that first leg because we know we can't have a rescue mission at Anfield in the second leg. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that from all three of you.
Mick?
I think it does bother me that we're away second. I'd always prefer to be home second. I think that's just, I imagine that's a generalisation with most Liverpool fans that you would prefer to be at Anfield. But I think the fact that the away goals doesn't count anymore, I think that does bring a lot into it, really, because it kind of evens the playing field a little bit. I think that's like what I said before we started recording. I'd take like just a 1-0. And even if they do score and it's 2-1, it doesn't hold the same weight in the way that it would going back to their place and they've got an away goal. It doesn't bring the same fear factor that you would normally have. So I think it doesn't bother me as much, but I think there's always that preference that you do want the second leg at Anfield under the lights, and it's a bigger occasion when the second leg's at Anfield, I think. But it still doesn't mean that we won't do the job, and I think like I said, they're not to be underestimated, and I don't think Jurgen or the players will, because like we said, they've proved how good they are beating Bayern Munich and Juventus, and to get that far already, I think it's, like I said, it's a bit of a free hit. They're just going to be going for it. I mean, I don't know if they'll be going out and out like a Man City, but they'll maybe sit back a little bit more. But when they've got pace on the counter and stuff like that, so that they're not to be messed with, and we just need to take it as serious as we can. And yeah, bring them on. I can't wait for it.
It's funny actually, because Jurgen Klopp alluded to that very fact, and I love the way he does this. Jurgen Klopp's got a way of speaking what we're thinking, if you know what I mean. So he alludes to the fact that one of the reasons, or one of the sort of things that may have gone in Villarreal's favour for the other games is maybe Bayern or Juve took them lightly, right? And he alludes to the fact that, well, we won't be, and we've learned from that. So maybe that's one less advantage for them. And us fans, that's what we want from Liverpool, right? Not to take them lightly, not to take them for granted. And when Jurgen Klopp talks about sort of analysing and sort of see how they've been setting up in these games, Josh, probably the perfect man to come to when we're talking about this kind of thing, because I had a little recap of the way they took on Bayern Munich. And Nagelsmann is a brilliantly fantastic young coach. But in my humble layman's opinion, right, sat in my box room on my laptop, I genuinely think he overthought this, or I don't know, especially in the second leg, because I don't know. This is the way I think. Hopefully, Conroy's got the Villareal and the two lineups. We'll take away the banner. Hopefully, as we can see with the Villareal, it's very, very very 4-4-2. But even if we look, especially if we look across the midfield, Josh, there are 4 central midfielders in effect, and he basically what Unai Emery done was used Lo Celso and Coquelin to double up on their wide men for the fullbacks, and totally sort of killed off any plans that Nagelsmann had of attacking from the wings. I thought it was very basic the way he done it, and I thought Nagelsmann was way too complicated in his head how to counter that. I don't know what your thoughts were on the game.
Yeah, well, they're a very strategic team, I think, Villarreal. And one thing they are very good at doing is getting opponents to play the game that they want them to play, almost. And I think, although you've just mentioned there on, what happened on the wide areas, Villarreal still kind of welcomed certain deliveries from Bayern that were not going to be particularly threatening. For example, in the second leg, they hit a total of 34 crosses, Bayern Munich. That's the most that they've hit in a single game all season, and it's not close. Their second most is 26. So you can tell there that that's an element of frustration almost. And then if you go a little bit deeper, you find that over the course of the 2 legs, they hit 24 shots from outside the box. So again, it captures the frustrations of Bayern, the lack of know-how maybe in terms of how to break down a block. I think it's interesting that Liverpool have just faced a block of players similar to what Villareal are going to come with. And Liverpool got the first half against Everton wrong. Second half was a little bit better, but you have to do certain things against a team like this. Obviously, Bayern didn't do those things. They got knocked out, scored 1 goal over 180 minutes. And I do think it's, with Everton, it's nice that Liverpool are facing them on the back of them knocking out Bayern Munich, because Liverpool can essentially watch back that tie and, effectively avoid what Bayern Munich got wrong.
I absolutely agree. Exactly. Even though that formation does say, even though we can't see the 2 centre halves, Conroy, but we know there's 2 centre halves lurking just above there. But the point being, I don't even think they set up like that. I mean, that formation does show that they played sort of 4 at the back. They actually played Pavard as a 3rd centre back. They used Coman and Gnabry as wing backs. Sorry, they used Davis and Coman as wing backs. He just kind of overcomplicated it, and as Josh says, from those numbers you can tell that they were forced into those crosses as opposed to it was the game plan, I feel. But for us, Mick, it's a total different scenario, isn't it? I mean, if you look at that lineup, right, of if we go back up a little bit, if we can see the lineup of the full lineup, Conroy, of Villarreal, we know that Moreno is out, or is he a doubt? I know he's definitely a doubt, but I think he's actually out.
I think he is, Grizz. I had a little look before he came on. I think he's definitely missing tomorrow's game. I think potentially for the season. Josh had mentioned that before he came on, but definitely for tomorrow, as far as I'm aware.
So if we take that on sort of, if we look at that team, Mick, on just face value without having a deep dive into the players' careers, whatever, just on the top of your head, Lo Celso, Capoue, Danjuma, Coquelin, basically players that couldn't hack it in the Premier League. That's one way of looking at it. The pace, the energy, the directness. Yes, Danjuma has gone on and shown sort of attributes that obviously, even including us, apparently, we looked at him carefully, showing attributes. And I know Josh is a fan because I've seen some of your stuff on him that you are a fan of Danjuma, aren't you? So he may have attributes. He may have attributes that possibly could attract a few Premier League clubs. But Lo Celso, Capoue, Coquelin, guys that are good players, but you know that phrase journeyman comes to mind. Would you agree, or am I being harsh?
No, I think you're right. I think I hate the term like system player, but I think it's the type of team and the type of setup, like you can see there, that's they're going to slot in and just do a job and break out with the pace. I mean, if Moreno was out, then is it Chukwueze maybe? I don't know. I'm probably butchering his name there, but he's got.
Yeah.
Thank God you went for it, Mick. Thank God, because I was about to say it there.
Yeah. So you can imagine, like, I agree completely with what Josh said. Like, the fact that we just faced Everton, it's a perfect dress rehearsal for this, because it's going to be low block, long balls into channels, use the pace and see what happens. Like Danjuma and Chukwueze, like both rapid. So we're going to have our work cut out if that does happen. But if Konate starts, which I expect he does, alongside Van Dijk, then we've got enough pace there to deal with that. But yeah, Lo Celso, Coquelin, Capu, like good players. They get stuck in. They've good technically, I suppose, but there's experience there as well with like Albiol and players like that who've been about, and like you said, Grizz a bit journeyman like, but also got a bit of know-how about them. And I mean, like we said, the teams that they've got through so far to get to this point just proves that, and we won't be taking them lightly. But yeah, that you can pretty much predict what they're going to do in terms of that. We knew what Everton were going to do, and it took us maybe 45 minutes, 50 minutes to kick into gear. That I expect that'll be completely different tomorrow night, because we'll be switched on from minute one, and we'll know what we're going to be up against, and we'll have the right tools to break it down. Like you've said before, Grizz, like we're perfect at the moment at figuring teams out and kind of tailoring our game to the best of our ability to kind of maximise the damage. And I think that's something that was so good at this season. And I think hopefully we'll do it again tomorrow night.
I just forgot Foyth was at Spurs, wasn't he? That's another ex-Premier League player there. So forgot about that. And who's, again, if you look at the back four, Conroy, Albiol must be close to 37, 38 now. Pau Torres, a very good young centre-back, very highly thought of, more of a Laporte type centre-back, a ball-playing centre-back. Not the quickest from what I've seen of him.
And the Euros didn't look the quickest. I actually quite like him, but I think, to be honest, Chris, there's not going to be that much spacing behind, I think. So,
well, yeah, exactly. Who's brave enough to try to pronounce the left back? Estepunian? Yeah, that's not a bad shot from me. He's the unknown quantity, but again, apparently he's very highly thought of. But if you look at, we've discussed the midfield, and I'm going to get sort of Josh's opinion on Parejo and the front lads. But just looking at that back four, Conroy, nothing stands out in terms of any three of our five potential forwards that couldn't cause a lot of issues for this back four.
No, I agree, absolutely. And I think it's spot on with that. I think you might find it'd be interesting to watch actually Pau Torres, because there's a lot of people who do rate him, to see how he copes with it tomorrow. What I would maybe say is, like, when you've got someone like Foyth at right back, he's played at centre back for Spurs, I think, quite a lot as well. So they players, I might be wrong here tomorrow night, but they tend to be not quite good at defending against wingers, in the sense of staying close to them, not being rash, not getting always overran. I could be wrong about that tomorrow. Just in my experience, off the top of my head, I tend to be quite reasonably okay at that. And you might see that tomorrow. But I do think ultimately we'll have a lot. But the big thing, just before Josh goes on to talk about this, is the comments about Bayern and the crosses. I do feel like Everton's a great example of how we don't have patience sometimes. And we've seen this more last season, that we start to just, smash balls in the box constantly, just whipping it in for the sake of it. Or maybe running out of ideas easily. I think tomorrow the most important thing, like a lot of times when you play low blocks, is just to have patience. We had patience at the weekend, and we scored in the 65th minute, and it was fine. We managed to get the second goal. I think that's maybe important tomorrow as well. Don't expect there to be a chance in the opening minutes. Hopefully we do, and I'm completely wrong, Grizz, but if that's the case, be patient.
Yeah. Josh, I want to come to you with the most intriguing area for me to over the two legs, or maybe not tomorrow, but over the two legs. So on face value, on paper, it's very obvious, especially the way they play. Parejo is their playmaker, isn't he? He's the what you'd call the brains, the technical player. If Moreno's injured, you guys are brave trying to say the name. I was going to call him Sam, very simply. Samuel, now I'm joking, I can say Chukwueze. Samuel Chukwueze is more likely to come in than there's another Spanish striker, isn't it? Alpaca. Anybody know?
Alcacer.
Alcacer used to play for
Alcacer.
Dortmund and Valencia.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean he's a far more of a target man, far more
He
slower.
was quite rated at one point, though, wasn't he? He was quite highly rated.
Yeah, exactly. But it'd probably be Chukwueze because of the pace factor. Again, another thing, Josh, they decided to do against Bayern because of the way Bayern set up, or he knew the way Bayern were going to set up. He played Moreno and Danjuma as wide strikers. Like hardly any of them played through the middle. Do you think that's the way he is going to set up with us, with Chukwueze on the right and Danjuma on the left? And if he does, what do you think his thinking will be behind that? What is the thinking behind that? Or was that, do you think, strategically just for the Bayern setup? Because there's not a lot of creativity. Again, hope these comments and hope these clips don't come back to bite us tomorrow. But if you look at that midfield, there's not a lot of creativity if you take away Parejo and his set-piece deliveries, in my opinion.
Well, I think everything that we've covered so far probably suggests that, we're trying to capture Villarreal as this strategic, functional unit of players, basically. You mentioned there about the back four. One of the things about the back four, despite how weak it might look on paper, is they're never defending as part of a back four because of how much of a unit they are. They're never exposed. They've always got support around them. Never really got much space in behind them. And they're asked to essentially play to the strengths, really. And, going back to what I said earlier about Emery being a bit of a cut manager, if you like, it's because he is so good at coming up with those individual strategic plans for isolated matches, and when it comes to coming up with a consistent philosophy for the league, he's not so strong. So if he's coming up with a specific game plan specific for Liverpool, just ask yourself now off the top of your head, what would you target? And I think if I'm Emery, I think he will play Danjuma on the left, and I think he'll target
100%.
Trent like Anthony Gordon did. And I think Villarreal will try and use balls over the top like City did. I think they'll try and play through our pressure and exploit the offside trap. But I think specifically Danjuma up against Matip and Trent, maybe that's a reason to bring Konate in. Konate is probably a better one-on-one defender. But it's going to be interesting to see what Emery comes up with. And, you mentioned there about Chukwueze playing and players like that. It depends what he wants from the Anfield leg, I think, because they've also got a lad called, this is another difficult pronunciation. I think is it Manu Trigueros, something like that.
Yep.
He could potentially come in, and Lo Celso could potentially go forward, because Moreno, who's on the list there, in terms of the forward, Moreno, he's not going to be playing either. I think he's got a hamstring injury.
Yep.
So it depends whether Chukwueze starts the match. If he does, maybe Emery's thinking on nicking a goal. If he doesn't, maybe Emery's going to look on keeping it tight and taking a 0-0 back to Spain. Maybe Chukwueze will come on if Liverpool gain the lead. But there's just, as you can see, based on what I'm saying, there's so many different ways in which this can go tactically. But I do think, you flagged Danny Parejo. He's probably their main. He's like their version of Xabi Alonso when Liverpool were under Benitez. I think he's currently third in the Spanish La Liga for progressive passes. So he's that kind of player. Looks forward, composed on the ball, could play for Manchester City. So it's going to be interesting to see where it goes, really. But I think Emery's strategic plan will revolve around exploiting Liverpool's right side and Liverpool's offside trap.
I think it will, but I just don't. I'm Conrad. You know me. I'm not this positive and calm. I haven't been this positive and calm in a long time, because Josh spot on. Danjuma is nailed on to play wide left in that Trent Matip. I think it's going to be Trent Konate area, and I think Chukwueze will come in on the right. But nothing suggests to me, that they're going to look for well, first of all, there is no away goal scenario, right? So that totally limits, or that totally maybe takes any adventure they may have had out, in my opinion. I think they're looking for a draw or a maximum of a 1-goal deficit to take back. I just don't see if we play as concentrated and the manner that we have been, I just don't see much threat. I don't see them being able to keep hold of possession as enough to break our press and to build up an attack. Again, I could be wrong. What do you think?
Yeah, well, the thing is, Grizz, logically you'd think that, but Everton had 80% and Anthony Gordon still caused quite a lot of havoc, and I'd say Danjuma's 5 times if that's a bit harsh. Danjuma's excellent, so I think he's a much better player. So to me, that tells me that you don't have to have excellent passes, especially as Josh said, if you've got someone like Parejo and his progressive passing who can also perform that pass. I can see them causing hassle. I'm not saying that hassle is going to amount to anything, but if they're targeting the Trent side with the early ball over the top against the high line, I do think Danjuma can cause problems. Ultimately, just running one-on-one, because I think he's a very skillful player, much more skillful than Gordon. So if Gordon can cause hassle, if we're not right at it, then I think Villarreal can. Grizz, I think we will be, but I'm just looking at it from the devil's advocate of what Everton did, and Everton had literally no build-up play and caused us problems. So I think Villarreal still can cause us issues.
Mick, I think brilliant segue into no, and I don't think it's going to happen, but there's a possibility of it happening. Conroy talks about the way Everton played us in that first half, and I agree that without any, we know Alan managed only 2 forward passes, and they were straight from the kickoff. So without many forward passes amongst the players in midfield, they still managed to get a couple of breakaways, not clear-cut chances per se. I know Decore had one, but that was sort of driving. What changed was, for me, the formation change absolutely bamboozled Lampard and Everton in that second half, and we took complete control. Is there a suggestion or a chance of us playing that formation from the off against Villarreal tomorrow with a double pivot and then playing 4 attackers, which will, in my opinion, totally bamboozle Villarreal and Emery's game plan? I don't think he'll be expecting that, anticipating that. I'm not saying that I am, but I'm just putting out there the way we performed in that second half against Everton was sort of night and day compared to the first half, right? Where we just played in our roles and we couldn't get much leeway.
Yeah, I think there's a big case for it, but I think I'd be surprised if he did as well. I mean, if we did do that and we just went out all guns blazing, I think we'd just cause havoc from minute one, and we could hopefully get a couple. But I just see us going a little bit more the usual setup, feel our way into the game, and then maybe bring on. I mean, I don't even know if Diaz will start. I mean, I'd be surprised if he doesn't after the way he played against Everton when he came on. But yeah, it's. I think it's all about winning those second balls. I think like we just touched on there, like the chances Everton created, it was all from us maybe playing a pass that was a bit risky. It bounces up, it bounces to them, they get a flick on it, and then it's a ball over into the channel. It's making sure that we're more comfortable and more careful with those passes into the channels and into the front men, and making sure that they're spot on. Otherwise, we're gonna find ourselves in a similar situation where we're getting broke on by the pace that we've talked about by Danjuma and Chukwueze. So we need to be careful with that, and I think that's why we maybe go a little bit more standard in terms of 4-3-3 initially. Feel our way into the game, see what they're going to provide, if they're going to provide anything other than what we're already expecting, and then kind of build from there. I'd be surprised if we go all guns are blazing, but you never know with Jürgen. So see what happens.
Josh, any surprises? Do you think the way we set up, anything that I've suggested, or have I been playing FIFA too much? But then no, Jürgen Klopp played FIFA in that second half as well. So great minds and all that.
I doubt it, but I think one fixture this does remind me of a few years back. We obviously played Atletico Madrid at Anfield in the Champions League. They were very much in fact, I might have used the back five at the time, but I think it was 4-4-2. Yeah, it was 4-4-2. And obviously, you know what you get from Atletico Madrid. They blocked the centre of the pitch and just didn't allow anything through the middle. So as a result of that, Liverpool played with the usual 4-3-3, but the right side of number 8 was Ox. And the reason for that, Ox, Trent and Salah, they could all be forwards, essentially. And they kind of combined as a trio. Obviously, Liverpool do it a bit more now anyway as a customary tactic. But back then, it was a bit more of a one-off. And these three essentially outnumbered the two that Simeone had on the flanks, if you know what I mean. His fullback and his wide midfielder would get constantly outnumbered by Liverpool's three. And it was what Klopp had to do because there was no space in the middle. There's nowhere else you can attack, really, apart from the flanks. So Liverpool were trying to manipulate the flanks, use the three to create spaces, allowing Trent to get good crosses in and things like that. It's not ideal, but it's kind of what you've got to resort to. So I do wonder if Liverpool will really, you've almost got to play around Villarreal's formation. So by doing that, you've got to be really offensive on the flanks. So I think it's going to be interesting to see who Klopp picks in his midfield and whether those players are comfortable in wide areas and things like that. Because I think Liverpool's openings are probably going to stem from, combinations on the edge of the box, crosses, things like that. It's going to be difficult because I was looking before at the set piece numbers and stuff, and they've conceded the fewest set pieces in La Liga this season. The fewest XG from set pieces in La Liga this season. So, in terms of breaking through, it's going to be difficult.
But this is it, exactly. I read that as well, and it's glad you reminded me. Apparently, they haven't conceded from a set piece corner.
From a corner, yeah.
From a corner. But then again, we do love stats like that because do you remember, Conroy, there was something similar for the Arsenal game or something? I can't remember now.
Arsenal hadn't conceded from I think maybe a corner or a set piece. It was
the least. Was it a corner?
Yeah. And then I think that to be fair, Sky Sports were willing that to happen because they kept bringing that stat up like every time a team got a corner in that game.
But do you know, I think not the opposite of Josh, but I think if we focus on our wide sort of how we normally attack through our wide men, Salah, Diaz, and then the two fullbacks as combinations, and then obviously our wide number 8. I think their game against Bayern Munich, where they doubled up with using Lo Celso and Coquelin, I think they're going to employ the same tactics. And this is why my head's been, it's been bugging in my head that I think we need to do something different through the middle. We don't normally focus our attacks through the middle until the second half, or we've seen instances, Norwich the other day, where we bring on someone to go through the middle alongside whoever the number 9 is. So whether it's Jota and Diaz or Mane and Diaz, as the case may be, I think we may have to come up with something different. It's just a hunch. It's just a feeling. I think if we attack and play the way we normally attack and play, and our way of playing systematically, it's almost a systematic way of playing, isn't it? Whoever that is, Henderson, Salah, and Trent, and then Robertson, Thiago, and Mane or Diaz, as the case may be. I think we'll be playing into their hands, and I think that's what they're expecting, absolutely expecting. I just think we have to do something different. But let's see, Conroy, taking that into consideration, because I know Josh has got to leave us very, very soon. What do you think lineup-wise tomorrow then?
So for me, I think Alisson, I think you guys are right. I think Mick said it first, Konate, I think it'll be Konate, Van Dijk, Robertson, Trent. My midfield, I'm going for, I think it'll be Hendo, Fab and Thiago, and a front three of Salah, Mane and Diaz. Interesting point, though, that Josh made about that kind of against the Atletico 4-4-2 and to kind of use Ox on that side. That was one of his best games. I remember he was outstanding in that game. It'd be interesting, Grizz. I do get what you're saying, but I do also think that Klopp does kind of stand by that. He trusts that they can outdo the opponent, and then if need be, he could change it in the 60th minute like he did at the weekend. But it's an interesting take. It'd be interesting to see what happens. Yeah,
not necessarily through personnel. It could be the way we attack, the way we set the shape in terms of, it doesn't have to be personnel, but it'll be interesting. Do you agree with that, Mick, that lineup, or have you got something else in your mind and tactically, the genius that you are?
No, I was literally, as Conroy was saying every name, I was like, yeah, that's exactly the team I would pick. I mean, I'd be happy if Klopp wanted to throw a little spanner in the works and go for something different, but I just can't see it in a game of this magnitude at Anfield. I just feel like we go with tried and tested, and like you said, Grizz, that's what they're expecting. But I feel like that was so comfortable in that way of playing, and I think, like we said earlier, like the Everton game was perfect dress rehearsal for this. We know what's required of us in terms of going forward, and I think, like Josh said as well, like those overloads down that right hand side of Hendo, Salah, and Trent play. We know those as a trio are really comfortable. The overlapping runs and balls in behind, balls into the box, which, like Josh also highlighted, that's going to be our way in. So I think that's where we focus. Obviously, Robbo had a great game against Everton, and I think Robbo and Diaz down that left side are already getting a good bit of rhythm going, and I think Thiago on that left as well also joins in with the attack, and I think that's where we'll go. Whether it will stay that way, obviously if we get a couple of goals, then it will be fine. But if we need to throw, like someone just put in the comments there, throw an Origi on to kind of put a cat amongst the pigeons towards the end, then so be it. But yeah, I think go try and test it and then see if we can feel them out initially, and I think that's what we're all expecting. I think that's what Emery will be expecting, but that's the way we need to go for a game of this magnitude, I think.
Yeah, Josh, after all that analysis, do you think, are you thinking, shut up, Grizz, we're going to play 4-3-3?
Do you know what?
Go on.
I'll be honest, since you mentioned it and, listen to the lads and that, I have thought, in the game against Everton, what changed the game was Liverpool's move towards a 4-2-4. Because we had more than enough players in the build-up. We only had one player really to cater for in Anthony Gordon. And we needed more movement in the box, more receivers in the box. And it changed the game. And I think against Villarreal, maybe there's the prospect of doing that. Just across the park, kind of going... Because a 4-2-4 is essentially 4-4-2, isn't it? So if you can match them across the park with the same formation, you've got better individuals across the park. And you can just be more aggressive from start to finish. Maybe there's an argument for that, especially if Danjuma is playing up against Trent and on the opposite side, as we saw on that graphic before. If Coquelin plays, I mean, Robertson's got freedom of the flanks because Coquelin's not going to pose a threat. So in that sense, you could argue Trent could stay back. Robertson could just play as an additional forward almost and arrive at the back post and things like that. But there's just so many different ways it can go. But I think because of that, I think Klopp will start with his 4-3-3, see how the side's looking, and hopefully Liverpool can get the lead and things like that. But I think further down the line, obviously Liverpool have got the options to mix things up.
Yeah, look, realistically, it's probably the way he's going to go. But I think he'll be. I know it's our strength. Of course, our strength. We're the best team in Europe, like the way we've been playing and everything. And I understand all that. But I think, do you remember, Conroy, how we discussed Man United was the worst preparation for Everton? But yeah. Everton is probably the best preparation for Villarreal. I think, but then the first half should also be a good preparation for how we shouldn't set up against someone who's going to play like Everton. And I genuinely believe they will. I think Danjuma is going to be their Gordon. I think Chukwueze or whoever else steps in is going to be used as a Richarlison. Okay, Chukwueze is more mobile and more of a wide man, but that's how they're going to set up. And I think they're going to play a box midfield. In fact, they can't play any other way with those personnel. None of them are, as Josh says, none of them are wingers. Like Coquelin hasn't played on the wing. Lo Celso's not really quick enough to play in the wing. They're very much midfielders playing in a box formation. I just think they're going to be concentrating on Trent, Robbo, and our two wide men. That's what just made me think possibly of a slight change in tack.
Yeah, no, I can completely get that, Grizz. I just lost my train of thought there. I was going to say something and I cannot believe I forgot it. Oh, it's gone now. But
I have that effect.
No, I think ultimately, like the way you're saying that about approaching it is probably fair, and Josh is right. You see how it's going, and then you can change that. And I don't think it's going to be. The reason we've done it against Everton is you're not going to be that much attacking threat. We should have enough to deal with it. If you just end up putting Fab or Thiago, whoever, in the two midfielders and just let everyone push up, it was. It's going to be interesting. But what I would say is I think that point, it was Josh's point, that's what it was he was saying about Robertson and pushing further forward. Now, it's not the best comparison, but I do remember Sheffield United last season on a bad run, and we kind of used that more. It was actually Jones joined the attack, and I think Robertson pushed high up as well. They had a free at the time, so it's not the best comparison. But I feel like that at the weekend was the best thing, because ultimately, even me, we beat Man United and I was like, we're amazing. We're the best. We'll smash anyone down. And then quite quickly realised Man United didn't follow Ralph Rangnick's instructions opening minutes, trying to play deep and then try to come out and like catch an offside trap. So that, I think very early in the Everton game, you realised, you know what, we're class, but they were awful. Even poor teams can cause a defensive problem for you. So I think it would have, sobered us up. You know, we realised that, and I don't think we'll go into the Villarreal game in the same way.
I'm going to give my hot take for the night. I think we will see a bit of a surprise. The first surprise, in my opinion, I think Fabinho is not going to start. And people may think, whoa. I think one of Fabinho and Thiago won't start. And that totally changes the way we play automatically straight away. Anyway, Henderson plays the number 6 slightly differently from the way Fabinho plays it, obviously. I think Konate will come in. I'm just intrigued to see who's going to step in instead of Fabinho and Thiago, because that will go a long way in seeing how we're going to set up and play. I'm intrigued, but I think it is an intriguing match. Hopefully we've done an intriguing build-up. Sorry for the early kickoff, but quite a few of you got here in the end. I know a lot of them messaging me like, oh, we're still on our way home. You've started already. I'm so sorry. But, you know, special guests have special requests, and this was on a request. But we'll get him on a normal time as well. No doubt soon. But, of course, really, really appreciate your time, Josh. Thank you so much for coming on, my pal.
No, thanks for having me, mate. Good to be involved, yeah, and hopefully Liverpool get a win. Absolutely.
And Mick, you're going tomorrow, aren't you? You managed to get a ticket, or you'll get one. I know you'll do. I know what you're going to do.
I'm working on it.
You're going to do one of those sorry tweets on Twitter saying, I've got a ticket. Can you believe it? And then someone's going to, I know how
As Grizz does it, like genuinely, Grizz will send that tweet out the day before, and I've never seen someone so successful as he gets them.
But you got to remember, I live like 4 hours away, so I'm allowed to like sort of plead and cry, like, you know.
Mick can see the stadium.
Mick lives within like Uber delivery radius. Do you know what I mean? It's like the stadium, like, you know what I mean? It's different.
Catchment area, get them for free. I'm hopefully going to get one. I hope I do.
Good luck. Well, you've been you can't be a bad luck charm because we haven't lost at home, but hopefully bring home another solid performance and a result. Guys, this has been carnage, literally. Sorry about all the mishaps and bit of time wasting. Tactics, you know, that we learned from Lampard and co. But hopefully we got there in the end. Hopefully we gave you a good insight into the game and how things might pan out, may not pan out. We could have egg on our faces tomorrow and everything could go tits up. But this has been carnage. See you for the post-match tomorrow. Take care. Over and out.